Hey, welcome back to the channel. So a question that I got recently was continuous integration and continuous delivery always seems to be an afterthought. It always seems to be we produce some kind of code and then CI/CD comes in. Should it come first? Do we even need it? Well, first, I think in order to answer that question, we've got to ask the question, why is testing important? Why do we need CI/CD? What is it? Why do we need it? So if we look at the first question is testing important? The answer is definitely yes. It's really important, right? Because when we take software and we write it and it gets more and more complicated, it becomes easier to introduce regressions. It becomes easier to break existing features. So it's really important to test to make sure that anything new that's introduced to a bit of software, or even if you're removing an old feature, an existing feature, or removing some old code, you want to make sure that that's not regressing existing code, right? You want to make sure that you're not taking an existing feature and you're not breaking it. So testing enables the business to create a set of expectations, and then they get met every time. So the expectation would be we're going to implement new things into our software stack and we don't want them to break existing functionality. We don't want them to introduce security concerns and so on and so forth. That's incidentally why we also pen test our software and our infrastructure on a regular basis, because even if you were to run a pen test today, there's no guarantee that 3 months down the line there haven't been significant changes to configuration and code that would result in the pen test now failing because a hole has been opened up somewhere in your defenses. So testing allows us to set a level of expectations as to what we want and what we don't want as well, and then constantly test for it. So CI/CDs, that's two separate things. It's CI, continuous integration, and CD, continuous delivery. CI, continuous integration, is about constantly integrating code together, as well as introducing tests as well. So CI was originally designed to take code from multiple developers and integrate it into one final artifact, one final thing that's then delivered to the end customer or the end consumer. And so that's the point of CI. And when you're doing that as well, you can not only merge all of that code together, but you can then test it. You can then run your unit test, your module test, your system test, your integration tests, whether you've got one of those or all of them. Then you can test them, test the software, test the changes, and then produce an artifact, which can then be deployed. And then that's where your continuous delivery comes in. And then your continuous delivery pipelines can then push that code out and so on and so forth. And it can test, well, after it's pushed out the code, it can test it. If it's a web app, for example, or if it's a binary application, it can open it and then run a testing suite to then test the application itself, go in, click buttons, fill in fields, and so on and so forth. So that's what testing gets us. That's what it is. When should it come in the pipeline? Should it come at the very beginning or should it come at the very end? Well, as someone that works in DevOps and as someone who is constantly delivering this kind of value to businesses, I say that you should get those processes right to begin with, and then you should get them in place from the very beginning. So there's no reason why you can't focus on a CI/CD stack from the very, very beginning. Get it in place, get it working, understand how when you create a new repository with some code in, understand how you can implement some tests so that you meet those business expectations, and then you just get them into your CI/CD stack straight away, so that when you're then pushing your first line of code, the tests are being run and you know straight away whether you're breaking things or whether you're producing successful results. Another thing to consider is if you look at something like GitLab CI built straight in, it's actually really easy to get going. One of the things I recommend my clients do is I recommend that they use groups within GitLab. So they take a group of projects, put them under one kind of umbrella, if you like, so kind of under one umbrella. Then what I recommend they do is that they register a group of GitLab runners against that group, and then they disable dedicated runners for each project, and then they enable the group runners for each project. That way, when you create a new project inside of that group, you just enable the group runner. You create a YAML file describing how to run your tests, and then you're done. Your whole CI/CD pipeline is all in place. You're testing straight away. from the get-go. I know it's not just as simple as clicking a few buttons and writing out a YAML file, but once you get into the process, you come out better off at the end of the day. You come out with stable code, you come out with stable systems, stable deployment, and the most important thing about CI/CD is, unfortunately, us humans are pretty flawed, and so what CI/CD actually does is it removes the human from a lot of the processes, and that's kind of what we want to do in IT. Actually, we want to almost automate ourselves out of as many of the processes as possible, and so CI/CD should come at the very beginning, in my opinion. So if we think back to the original question, CI/CD, why is it always an afterthought? And I think that's because it's mainly misunderstood, it's overcomplicated, it's overthought, they're not using the right stack, they're not utilizing a lot of the features that come included in these stacks, like group runners, so groups for your projects, and then using group runners to just apply to everything underneath that group to automatically run the tests. But once you get into the swing of these things, it's super simple, and you can just start with a CI/CD pipeline from the very beginning. Listen, if you really enjoyed this video, then give me a subscribe and a like so that I know I'm doing the right thing. And of course, leave a comment, let me know what it is that you do with your CI/CD stacks. What software do you use? Do you use GitLab? Do you use Azure Pipelines? Are you using Jenkins? What's your favorite stack for your CI/CD implementation? Let me know in the comments below. And of course, if you've got any questions, then we have a Discord community. Check out the link, come along, it's free, join, ask some questions, maybe get some help, meet some new people. Let us know what you think of the video. Let us know what you'd like to see in future videos. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next week.